Hello everyone! I am recording a new tutorial for a quick model that we're going to make together inspired by this project by Veronica M on Behance. And in this project, she created this very cool bunny and a summer vibe and a pool, really enjoying the sun. The models in the project itself are relatively simple, which is why I think that we can tackle some of them. Really, we're only going to be looking at these sunglasses. We're going to recreate them because they are a good way to practice the tools that we have learned up to now. But something to look around is that really, with everything that you know right now, you can make all of this. Maybe with the exception of this umbrella, but everything else, you can totally do it. So we're gonna use the tools to recreate the sunglasses to get started on how to use the symmetry object, the volume builder and mesher, and other things like that. All right. So this is what we're going to create. So the first thing that we want to do here is create the frame for the glasses. So we're going to take out a cylinder object. And we want the frame to be facing us, right? So this is the front view. This is how I would want the frame to face us. Instead of having to go and rotate it, I'm just gonna change the orientation of it to +Z, and that automatically changes the plane where it lives at. So now it is facing us. I will give you some specific numbers, but again, feel free to play around with the numbers and do it however you feel like it works best for you. So in the case of this, we're gonna leave the radius at 50 centimeter, but we're gonna make it a lot thinner. So we're gonna bring down the height to 15 centimeters, and you can do that either by clicking and dragging this button here, or by typing in here 15 centimeters, or clicking and dragging, or clicking and dragging here. Again, multiple ways for you to get to the same thing. So we're gonna do 15 centimeters for that. And then I want to make sure that we add rotation segments, because as you can see, these are pretty jagged edges. So here we only have 16 as shown here in the rotation segments. We want to add 36 so that it is a lot smoother. We're going to smooth it later on, but immediately it gets a lot better and we could use this to move on. So this is going to be the frame. Now we want to cut out where the lenses would go. So to do this, I'm just going to name this frame. And I'm gonna copy, so Command C, or you can go up to Edit, Copy, and then Command V or Edit, Paste. In this other frame, I'm gonna call it Frame Cut Out. And what I want is to reduce this. So the size of it should be a lot smaller and the height of it should be bigger, because you should cross through the frame because we're going to use it as a cutout. So let's increase the height. It doesn't matter how much, just increase it so that it's bigger than frame. So frame is 15, height could be anything after 15. I left it at 41. And then the radius is what needs to come down. So we're going to bring down the radius to 35 centimeters. So that we have the frame here, and I'm gonna put my garage shading line so that you can see where these cross. So this is what we're gonna cut out. So really quickly, I'm gonna put on the screen, what object do you think that we could use to cut something out? If you chose the bull, then you would be correct. So let's go here into our generator menu and select the bull object. Then you want to click and drag, make a marquee so that you can select both frame and frame cutout, and make them both children of the bull. So something happened here, but it's not what we want it to happen. So right now the bull is set as A subtract B. So we are cutting out the frame from the frame cutout, which is not what we want. We want to cut out the frame cutout from the frame. So all we have to do here is just change the order of the children, right? The frame should be first, the frame cutout should be second, because we want to take A and subtract B out of it. So now we're left with this. Next thing that we're going to make is the temple. So the temple is this part of the glasses. So let's just take out a cube. And again, I will give you specific numbers, but you can use some that look good to you. So what I will do is I'm gonna make this cube first much thinner, because it is very wide. It's covering the entire thing. So first thing I want to change is the size in X. Again, I can click here and make this smaller this way. I want to go down to 10 centimeters. Then I obviously want to make it smaller in its height. So in the height, I'm also going to come down. Here, I'm going to leave it at 25 centimeters. And then I'm going to leave the size Z as is. So this is going to be our frame. Remember that we are going for like a caricature look, so it doesn't have to be perfectly proportional. There will be parts that will be exaggerated, such as these temples, but if you want to make it proportionate, then just change the sizes. So I will now move this towards the left so that it interacts with the frame. So I'm going to call this frame, and I'm going to call this temple. And now I will move it back in Z so that it interacts with it, does not cross it from any of the angles, but we actually want it to be as close to the right as possible. So we want to move it as close here as possible, but that it doesn't cross, right? We don't want it to cross. And we are going to have to fix this later on when we start making things a lot smoother, right? So that is our temple. Next thing that we're going to do is add the nose bridge. So again, take out another cube. I'm going to immediately name it nose bridge. And I know I want this one to be a lot smaller in Y. So I will bring this down to 15 centimeters in Y. A lot smaller in X. So I will put this at 8 centimeters in X. And also a lot smaller in C. So I'll bring it down to 10 centimeters in C. So we just get this tiny little rectangle here. And we will move this so that it interacts with the center. Make sure that you're only moving it in X. So only the X should be highlighted, so that it crosses. All right, that's the general idea of the glasses. We're only gonna make one side so that the symmetry can make the other side for us. All right, so now that we have this, we're gonna put this into the symmetry object so that the symmetry can do the rest of the work for us. So first, let's group these together. So I'm gonna take out a null object, click and drag so I select everything but the null, and make these children of the null, which I'm going to call glasses left side. Now I will drag glasses left side until this part, so the end of our nose bridge, it's as 0, which would be centered here where our world axis is. So I'm gonna drag it only to the left. So I'm only moving it in X. Notice here in the coordinates, I am only moving it in X. So I will drag it until it's about at 0. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but close to 0. And now that it's there, I will use the symmetry object to make the other side for us, because I know that I want the other side to look exactly like this one. So I will take out a symmetry object, and I will make glasses left side a child of my symmetry object. And immediately we get the other side. Notice that the symmetry object now shows us the plane that this is being mirrored on, which in this case, it is plane X, which is perfect because that's what we want it to be mirrored on. And if we don't want to see this in the middle, which I personally don't, after I'm happy with how it looks, I'm just going to check off show planes. And now we have both glasses. Before we move forward, I do want to connect these objects so that whatever we do with it later, it is treated as just one object. So I will take out the connect object here and put my symmetry as a child of my connect. So now this is being treated as just one object. I left this little gap here, and this is where the connect object really comes in handy, because instead of having to move things and try to get it exactly to 0, I'm just going to increase the tolerance of how much space there needs to be in the middle for them to connect. So right now, that's it. 0.16 worked for me because that's about how much space I left in the middle. Make sure nothing else got affected by that because this is affecting the entire object. But there we go. Now this is one connected object, and this is the basis of our frame. So I'm going to call this glasses. Now, before we make this smoother, I do want to add a little bit of complexity to the glasses. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a bend deformer and use that on our temple so that we can have a bit of a bend back here. So I'm taking out my bend deformer and I am making it a child of my temple, hitting fit to parent so that it goes around my temple. But I only want it to affect this back part, so I can make it smaller and just move this back here. And we're probably gonna need to rotate this and we'll have to resize it after we rotate it. But this helps us get a visual of what we want. So the first thing that we need are some segments on this, because if we bend this, as you can see, it's bending very straight. So I want to add segments to my tempo, and I'm just going to add 15 to all sides. As you can see, I got a lot more segments here, and I'm going to make sure that my garage is just garage shading so we don't have to actually see that. So now we're dealing with the bend. Notice that if I bend as it is right now, it is bending in the wrong direction. This is not the bend that I want. So the bend that I want is for it to actually like move down here. So what I'm going to do is rotate this bend until it gives me the bend that I want. So I will rotate it perhaps in X and only in one direction. Make sure you're not rotating back here, because you'd be rotating in multiple directions at the same time, and that's not what you want. Want to rotate one at a time and see if this gives us what we want. So first I'm going to rotate it like this. So I'm rotating it 90 degrees towards me in X. So that's the red one. And that's still not the look that I want. So now I'm going to rotate it with the green one. So Y, I'm going to rotate it to the left 90 degrees. And that is the idea. So this is about playing around with the way that it is rotating and then making sure that you're only doing it one at a time. So my bend currently has 90 degrees rotated in X and 90 degrees rotated in Z. And now I'm going to change the size of it so that it fits this better. So I'm going to make this bigger here in Y. I'm going to make it smaller here in Z. And I just need the general idea. I don't need it to absolutely fit, but just the general idea of it going around that frame. And now I can move it so that I can get a more dramatic bend. So I can move back or I can move forward. I think that works for me. It is very cartoonish, it is very dramatic, but that's exactly what I want. We're going for a cartoon look here. So that will be it for me. And now that I'm happy with that, I will hide my bend. So I'm only hiding it in the viewport so I don't have to look at it. So I'm hiding my bend here in the viewport. And now our glasses are a little bit more complex. All right, so that's the general idea. You can add more deformers if you like you can add a taper that makes this part a little smaller, or you can add an FFD so that you can add more detail. We are going for simple and cartoonish, so I will leave mine as is. Now that I have this, I want to make all of this a child of a volume builder so that it connects them together. So I'm taking out my volume builder, putting my glasses as children of it, and it automatically turns my geometry into voxels. And the voxel size is 10 centimeters, which is way too big. I want to bring that down to 1 centimeter. So I'm typing in 1. And if 1 centimeter is too much for your computer, because it does have to calculate all this, you can increase it a little bit more. This doesn't fully connect them, or at least it doesn't smoothly connect them. So I'm going to add an SDF smooth, which is going to be a filter layer for us. And what that's going to do is smooth out the shape of the glasses. And here we go. This is the look. I do want to fix the tempo a little bit, so I'm just clicking on tempo and I'm moving it to the right slightly so that it is closer to the right, but it doesn't protrude here. We don't want it to come out here. So I'm going to take my time and make sure that this looks closer to what I want it to look. And that's the idea of it. Now, remember, the volume builder only makes voxels, and Cinema does not render voxels. So we need to make these children of the volume measure. So everything now needs to be a child of the volume measure. And now we're back to having geometry. So now, everything we did here with the frame, the cutout, the tempo, now this is all connected and smoothly connected at that. So this looks great. Next step, let's add some lenses here. So to add the lenses, let's take out a disk object, so a disk parametric object, change the orientation of it to +Z so that it is facing us in the front. And again, I will give you some specific numbers for this. So for the outer radius, I want to go to 35 centimeters. And once this is here, I want to only moving it in X. I want to put it where the left side of these glasses are. Something I do want to mention is that sometimes in tutorials you will see people calling this the right side, and the reason I'm using the left side is to make things a little clearer for you so you understand it. But truly, this would be the right side, because if you were the character, this would be your right eye. So when people are modeling things that have to do with characters, they tend to use the orientation of the character's eyes as where it is. So technically this would be the right side of the character, but I am using left side just to make things simpler because this is one of the first few times that we're dealing with anything character related. So I am up to 35 centimeters. I want to try to center this. Let's maybe go up to 40 centimeters so that it crosses fully and we don't have to worry about centering it perfectly. That's good. Now again, let's add a little bit more complexity to this. So we want to take out a spherify deformer. So similar to what we did with the flower and the petal, want to take out a spherify and make it a child of the disc. Immediately hit fit to parent. And here for the spherify, we want to move it backwards a little bit so that the spherify, so the rounding happens towards the front. So if I move it backwards a little bit, as you can see here, we got a pointy bit. And can you guess why this is happening? It's because our disc does not have enough segments for this to properly round out. So I'm going to increase my disc segments here to maybe 20, which is more than we need, but it'll work for now. And now going back to my garage shading lines, I can see that my lenses are fully pointing out. And perhaps this spherify is a little bit too strong, so I will reduce the strength of it. We just want it to be a little bit rounded out, and I'm gonna move it back a little. So just having it round out slightly. So play around until yours looks the way that you would want it to. Once we're happy with it, I'm gonna name this lens. I'm gonna hide the spherify so I don't have to look at it in the viewport. And I'm gonna use a symmetry object to do the same thing on the other side. So take out a symmetry object, lens a child of the symmetry. Immediately it does it perfectly. We don't have to look at the plane, so I'm gonna click on show planes. And that's our model. Before we finish up, let's first save. So file, save project, parametric glasses. So I'm calling this parametric glasses because everything here has parameters, meaning I can go back in and play with every single attribute. I can constantly change all of this. Nothing here is permanent. So I'm calling it parametric glasses, save. And now one last thing before we're fully done with this, I want to add some materials. So go to your material manager and I want to add one material, which is going to be for the frame. So I'm going to make these glasses blue. And let's make them red. Drop this onto either the frame here or the volume measure here. And then another material, which is going to be for the lens. So I'm going to make this a very light blue. I'm going to drop it on the lens here. And there we go. Those are our glasses. Now remember to save again because these materials did not get saved with our previous save. So go again to file, save, and it will overwrite the previous file. And now we want to take out a nice render of this. So you can position this however you like until you get a render that you are happy with. And render to picture viewer. Those are our glasses. And there we go. That's our tutorial for today.